Hey everyone, how's everybody doing today? I can see that the stream is choppy. I don't know why this happens sometimes, but let me see if I can fix this. Uh, all right, I think that worked. My goodness, how's everybody doing today? Sorry about that. There's always some technical glitch. I don't know why, but that's I've been doing these streams for about 2 years now, and it's rare it just comes out of the gate perfect, right? There's probably still, it looks like some audio delay too, but I don't know what to do. Anyhow, welcome everybody. I see Michael's here. Randy, good to see you. And let's see, Roberto's here, and George Mooring. Awesome. Good to see everyone today. I wow, I've been so busy, so busy. And I can't think of what I've been doing. It's unbelievable. I just like what I made a video yesterday about this lens, right? I talked a little bit about it last week in my stream, but I finally hunkered down and made the video review of it after doing, a few photo walks with it. And yeah, that's a heck of a lens. I was really shocked. If you haven't seen, I posted the video last night, my review on this lens. It's the 7 Artisans 50 millimeter f 0.95. And when you nail focus, it's really sharp. I mean, it has some issues that I talked about in the video, particularly when you're dealing with very bright, contrasty images, or you have sun kind of going into the lens. There's some flare. Uh, but, these very minor things really, uh, you know, how often do you really take pictures of very high contrast, very bright and high contrast images? If you just stop down to like f2, it's fine. Um, it gets rid of a lot of the flare, or some, most of the flare, and also it cleans up the contrast and everything. But most of the time, you can shoot wide open at f9.5, and if you can nail focus, lens is pretty sharp. You just add a little bit of sharpening or contrast in post, and it's perfectly usable, more than usable. It's very good. Um, oh, you like seeing the shots from the vintage glass, right? Yeah, that this OM-50. I mean, I didn't really talk about it in the video. I meant to, but I don't know. After about 4 hours of editing, I just totally forgot. Uh, but this 50 millimeter f1.8 is really sharp. I mean, and it's only $30. It's not quite as sharp as the 7 Artisans, and that's probably because of its age. I mean, it looks clear to the naked eye, but my eyes aren't that great. It doesn't give you the bokeh you'll get at 0.95, but how often do you really need that? Not very often. Most of the time, you're going to be stopping down to f2.8 or f4 to get your shots, so you can get a nice sharp image. And the Nikon, now this lens is actually a little soft across the board, and again, a little bit of sharpening or contrast in post, and it cleans up nicely. And it'll give you a nice shallow depth of field at 1.4, but it's just a hair too soft at 1.4 on subjects kind of far away. But if you're shooting up close, like most lenses, if you're shooting within a reasonable distance, 2 meters, 10 meters, something like that, most lenses will perform just fine. It's when you kind of get to the extremes, like you want to hit the minimum focusing distance, or you want to shoot near infinity, that's when you kind of push the optics of the lens, it seems. And I found this to be true across all the lenses, just like these zooms. They kind of have an optimal point. It seems like zoomed out, like this is the 14 to 150. If I zoom this all the way out to 150, it's a little soft, and it's hard to get a really sharp image. So I always back it off back to about 100. So anywhere between 14 and 100 millimeters, this lens is pretty good, except on the edges, and you have to stop it down just like everything else. But this is still my go-to lens for like 99% of my photo walks and things. I like to take this because of the versatility of going from 14 to 150. And it's because it's tough shooting 50 millimeters on micro four thirds, right? For the kind of photography I do, street photography, photo walks. Um, but when I go out with the intent to shoot at this focal length, I can find things to take pictures of, right? But it's just not quite as flexible, But I'm gonna take this out some more. So look for some more photo walks in the future with this lens, just for fun, right? I'm not going to be doing a hardcore review on it because I don't know. Photography is just about having fun and taking pictures for me, anyway. I mean, I do it for a living too, but seriously, for like the other 4 or 5 days of the week, I'm just shooting for fun, and then 1 or 2 days a week, I might actually have a photo job if I'm lucky. And it's mainly because I don't try that hard to get new jobs. I'm just content with, just doing a few jobs here and there. And I do have a photo job coming up this week on Thursday. So I'm not sure. And then I have another tutoring session Friday. I want to do another photo editing live stream where you guys can actually chime in and participate live with me rather than just the chat section. Actually dial in like a Zoom call or conference call. I'll be using this app actually. I could even right now, if you guys wanted, give you a link that you can come in and be on the stream at the same time with me, like as a guest. I don't know if anyone wants to come in, just let me know. I'll put the link in the chat section, and you should just come right up. Okay, let me check the chat here real quick. Good morning, Darko. How are you? Yeah, Randy says most of his picks are at f4 and f5.6. Now, I would agree with that, mainly because I don't have a choice. I'm using a kit lens, right? But even when I'm shooting primes, I'm shooting, f4, f5.6 anyway, because I just don't need that shallow depth of field for most of my shots. And we all know the lenses, particularly micro four third lenses, are really sharp at f5.6. And John Yutse came in. Hello. Yeah, Roberto, you do need an adapter. For this lens, but it's not, the lens itself is tiny, right? Here's the adapter. It's as big as the lens is. I mean, I have this lens, honking lens hood on it too. Oh, man, I just touched the rear element. I gotta clean that now. But this is the OM-50 lens all by itself. I mean, it's tiny. And I got to do this before I forget. I know I shouldn't just clean it with a bare microfiber cloth, but it's an old lens. I'm not too worried about it anymore. But yeah, the adapter is as big as the lens, just to give you some perspective. And then when it's on there, it's just beautiful. Like I said, I always use a lens hood. That really does help with the flaring, particularly with vintage lenses. You know, everybody says, you know, there's a lot of people that just don't use lens hoods. It's like Robin, and I just saw James Pops's. He had a video about not using lens hoods. Something about he liked the flare, you know. And you're not going to get much flare with a modern lens because the coatings are so good. Because most of the flare, you know, is when the sun comes into the lens and the light's bouncing around inside, and that's what's causing the flare. So you got to have good coatings on the inside lenses, not just the front element. So the front element reduces the flare, but then the coatings on the internal lenses also help reduce flare. So that's like this 50 millimeter from Nikon. I got this huge lens hood on it because this one is really bad. I don't need it quite as much on this lens. The flaring's not quite as bad on this lens. But yeah, I'm a lens hood whore. I mean, if I can use a lens hood, I will. I just don't like the flare because it, you know, if you get kind of that cool looking flare, right? Like you see in sci-fi movies and stuff, you know, that kind of flaring is kind of cool. But most of the time, the flaring that you get when you take a picture is just, you know, spread out all over the image and making the entire image soft and low contrast. And it's not it's not pleasing in any way. It's you know, and it's not easy to get that really neat looking flare time to time. Like you see in the movies, you really need like one of those cinematic lenses. I forget what they call them to get that kind of flaring. Okay, and let's see what else is going on. And Bobby's here. Hello. And purple fringing. Yeah, purple fringing is an issue with non-Olympus lenses, right? Especially any manual focus adapted lenses, because the camera doesn't know how to correct for it. So you're going to get purple fringing whenever you use lenses like this. I mean, stopping the lens down helps minimize that, and it's less fringy, meaning you might still see some purple like fringing, but it's not too far outside the subject itself, right? It's easy. It's corrected a little bit easier in post. You just have to be careful if you take pictures of purple or bluish things. You know, trying to correct for purple fringing can offset the color of the entire image in some cases. I mean, Lightroom's really good at not doing that, but I tried to reduce purple fringing by dialing the purple back globally. And I've noticed on some images that did affect the overall color. And when the fringing is just offset, slightly offset from the subject itself, like, you know, if you have a branch and the purple fringing is not on the branch, it's off the branch, those are hard to correct in post without looking weird, right? And getting haloing and things like that. So you really have to stop down. And for landscapes like with trees in them, you're going to stop down anyway. Yeah, it has been a while. I'm doing well, Darko. Thank you. Um, and let's see. Cold, damp UK. Yeah, I noticed some of the UK photographers are starting to wear their caps and jackets now in their vlogs. I think I got another 3 weeks before I really might wear a light jacket, but a day like today where it's humid but it's not hot, I can still wear my shorts and stuff. And anyway, Ian says, new to photography, EM-10 Mark III. Can most exposure small errors be corrected in software? Yeah. Uh, if you're within one stop difference, easily corrected. Maybe even on a JPEG. Within one stop, certainly on a raw image and to some extent on a JPEG, you can correct exposure errors. If you want to go two stops difference, and I'm assuming you know what a stop is, but if you're two stops off in any direction, you can also correct for that easily with a raw file, not so much with a JPEG. Three stops is pushing it. You could do three stops of exposure compensation or exposure correction in software, but the results are going to be mixed. Depends on how the image was taken and the lighting in the image at the time. But yeah, easily two stops and three stops with a little luck, and 4 or 5 stops. Yeah, that would be hard to do. That you're just too far off to correct that and still get a usable image in terms of a deliverable image. If you were getting paid for these images, 2 stops no problem. 3 stops is iffy. 4 or 5 stops difference, you probably wouldn't be able to deliver an image like that for personal use. Yeah, correct it as much as you want, but yeah, okay. So that's my opinion there. And oh yeah, Roberto, I think you did have a video on the OM-1 recently, right? I meant to check that out. I saw the thumbnail for it. Yeah, the OM-1, it's a great camera. I got a couple of them, and maybe three of them, but only one works. I use the other ones for parts, the little caps and things. And I only paid like 25 bucks a piece for them. I bought them all on eBay as uh, parts for parts only type things where they didn't work. And I was able to get one working out of the 3 that I bought. And I might have fixed 2 of them and sold one and kept one, and then I still have one that's totally broken. So I came out ahead in that case. Because sometimes, fixing them, it's been a while. It's been about 5 or 6 years since I bought that thing. But sometimes it's just the shutter mechanism is jammed, and you can push the lever or something and it unlocks, and then it seems to work fine after that. Some people just don't know that you can release the shutter pushing something inside. I can't. Anyway, something like that. Yeah, I would take an EM-1 just for fun. I mean, it's a fully mechanical camera, and you can buy these third-party light meters for about $25 to $30 if you want to have accurate metering or semi-accurate. And with film, you have a lot of wiggle room, so you can buy these. And I bought one. God, I gotta shoot. I've been saying this for about 3 weeks now. I want to go out and shoot some film. I bought this light meter here that just goes on the hot shoe like so, and it has the light sensor here, and it's pretty accurate, for just a global. It's not a spot meter or anything, but it's pretty accurate and good, and certainly good enough for film. And let's see. Oh, hey, Ben is here. How you doing, Ben, from the Narrowband channel? His channel's growing nicely. He's up over 2,000 subscribers now. He focuses primarily on astrophotography. So for those of you that don't know the Narrowband channel, he uses Olympus gear, and shoots astrophotography with it and gets amazing images. So I have to find a weekend the next time you're going out to the farm because those shots were pretty nice. In the wintertime, I think we get a lot more clear nights than we do in the summer. At least they're longer, so we have a bigger window, right? But this is the narrowband channel down here. So definitely check out his channel if you haven't already. He's got a lot of great content, and he really one of the things I learned that just sticks with me, because I'm very conscious of noise, right, in our images, but we never think about noise, or the way we think about noise now is for regular photography, where our shutter speeds are normal, right? 1/60th, 1/1000th, etc. And then we shoot at high ISO. And that's how we think about noise. But in astrophotography, you have to think about noise on so many other levels because you're doing long exposures. And one of the biggest contributors is just the heat, right? From the sensor being on for several minutes or several hours, depending on the exposure. And then there's other kinds of noise, right, that you have to think about that are not heat related. But he goes into a lot of detail across several videos, and we had a live stream together where we talked about that as well. So if you're interested in astrophotography and want to get the cleanest images you can, definitely check that out. Yeah, not using lens hoods. I know, it's blasphemy. Yeah, the lens hood on the 40 to 150 is flimsy. I buy the third party metal lens hoods that screw into the thing. I don't use, unless it comes with the lens, I don't use the lens hoods that Olympus makes. And then Randy says, I'm one of those that does not use UV filters or such on the front of my lenses. Yeah, I don't use UV filters. I do use a polarizer quite a bit and ND filters quite a bit. But UVs, yeah, never. And Music Sound Gear doesn't use any. And let's see. Andrew says, I'm upgrading my kit. EM-1 Mark II, EM-1 Mark III, or Panasonic G9 are the contenders. Any advice on which one? Money no object. Get the EM-1 Mark III and get it on sale. I've seen it for $14.99, maybe less. But yeah, EM-1 Mark III really has the most features, right? The handheld high-res shot mode is a big deal in terms of features, right? That's kind of a nice feature to have. The Starry Sky AF, if you want to do night photography, is really nice. It works well, and it has the best image stabilization and battery life over the Panasonic G9. Up to 7.5 stops with a lens that's compatible, right? Stabilized lens. For regular lenses, it's 6.5 stops, just flat out. It's the best by far. And I think the ergonomics are the best. I prefer the ergonomics on the M1s over the Panasonics. Also, by far. I mean, it's a big difference. So you either love Panasonic and hate Olympus, or vice versa, because they're so different in terms of ergonomics. So I'm in the Olympus camp. I really like the ergonomics of the Olympus. So the handling is much better, and the experience with it for me is much better. And I would say the Pro Capture feature is hard to beat. That's something that G9 doesn't have. It does have a 4K capture mode that's similar, but that's JPEG only, right? You can do Pro Capture 60 frames per second in RAW. And you can do like, I think it's 30 frames per second, with continuous autofocus. But I've gotten some amazing shots using Pro Capture, and knowing that I captured that in RAW is helps a lot in post processing if I need to do any. So those features right there, I think, make the Olympus stand out over the Panasonic G9. But that said, it's like at least $500 more, right? If you can find a really good deal on a G9, I think the G9 has, excellent build quality, excellent features, excellent image quality, and it's by far superior with respect to video capability. The autofocus, not so much. The autofocus in video is uh, not even close to the M1 Mark III. But for video features, it's pretty solid. If you want to get into video and you're going to take advantage of like the, what do they call it? They're flat files, not flat files, but if you want to shoot in, I don't know why, because I never used them myself. Log files. Yeah. You can get an extra stop or two of dynamic range in your video files shooting log. But the M1 Mark III does have 4K with OM log 400, which is pretty good. And if you're not that serious about videography, right, you're not going to do a ton of grading. The OM log 400 is really good. It does pull in about another stop of dynamic range over, say, just recording in the natural color profile. And the autofocus is amazing. I can tell you that, for video, autofocus, no question, is really good. It'll track you, follow you everywhere if you're doing this, the test that you always see. But the autofocus for photography is also excellent, particularly the face detect is really good on the EM1 Mark III. Now, the EM1 Mark II, on the surface, looks like it's basically the same camera without a couple of bells and whistles. But the face detect and the autofocus algorithm in the M1 Mark II is nowhere near as good as the M1 Mark III. The image stabilization is not as good as in the M1 Mark III. And then it lacks the high-res shot mode handheld, it lacks the live ND, and it doesn't have USB-C charging. You can charge a battery in camera if you want to. And I believe you can use it at the same time. I never do those things, but I believe you can use the camera and charge it at this. I'm not going to say that for sure. I don't know. But you can definitely charge USB-C with the EM1 Mark III. So if the $500 difference, I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it for the EM1 Mark III. Between the G9 and the EM1 Mark II, if you're going to look at that price point, I think the Pro Capture feature, if you're into photography and sports action, makes the M1 Mark II a better choice over the G9. The G9, though, the one thing that I like about the G9 over all of the Olympus cameras is that little top plate LCD. And that's just that should not be a deal breaker for anybody, right? It's just a stupid LCD plate. But I just like it personally. That's the one thing I like about it. And one day I'm going to get a G9, but I just don't need one now. I'll get a G9 if one falls into my lap super cheap somehow. Just because I like that one feature about it in particular. Even my Panasonic Ivan S5 doesn't have a top plate LCD, and it's a much better camera. But anyway, that's my advice on that. And I do have a video comparing the EM1 Mark II, the EM1 Mark III, somewhere on my channel. I do have a video for that, but that sums it up. It's worth the extra 500, in my opinion, for the autofocus face detect. If you don't need face detect, you don't care about handheld high-res shot mode, then EM-1 Mark II is fine. Okay. And Andrew says there are two drawbacks for the G9. One is the lack of live comp. Oh yeah, live comp is another one that is really a lot of fun to use on the Olympus cameras. That's on the M1 Mark II and the Mark III. And that I would use another is the G9 is contrast detect only AF. For photography, that's not a big deal. For video, it's a little more significant. And I don't know how the face detect is on the G9 in low light. I know the M1 Mark III is pretty amazing face detect, even at distance. The M1 Mark II, the face detect is good when you have the person in the frame, filling the frame, at least a quarter of the frame. But once they get a little bit further back, then yeah, it falls apart. The XD11, yeah, I remember that camera. Vaguely remember that, but that's a cool little camera. And Neverman said, I just picked up a good polarizing filter. Can't wait to try it on some moving water. Yeah, polarizers do make quite a bit of difference particularly in water, but also on plants, and it doesn't have to be uh, any kind of reflections. It makes a difference. Like if you're trying to, like I was doing some photos of some old cars and trucks, or old trucks in particular. And I was able to adjust the polarizer so I didn't get so much glare off of the windshield and headlights and things like that. And I got a much crisper image. Also, when I was taking photos of plants, even though it wasn't raining or wet, the plants have a certain amount of shine on their leaves sometimes. And I was able to adjust the polarizer to get a much better contrasty image by getting rid of that shine. So polarizers, do make a big difference in photography by reducing glare, reducing haze and shine and reflections. It's pretty substantial. I mean, when you first get a polarizer, and if you don't have a lot of experience using one, it might be hard to tell it made any difference at all. But once you get a feel for when to use a polarizer and the effect that it can have on different types of subjects, you'll really enjoy having one. That's what I mean about a lot of these uh, drive-by reviews, right? Whether it's camera or lens or any kind of gear, they get the thing in, and a couple days later they just do this review on it, but it's not full on real life experience, right? I mean, I'm sure it's a competent review. A lot of them are very competent, but they just don't really, they're not like real life reviews. Like, I'm going to go out and use this gear and use it and see how it does, or I know when this particular uh, piece of gear works best, right? Because you've been using it a long time. Like this lens review I did on this. I mean, I took this out about 4 times with me. Two photo walks and 2 other times for my personal stuff, and I got a really good feel for when this lens is best, right? Very quickly, I got a good feel for it because I didn't have any issues with it between f2 and f8. It's super sharp and great, but it took me several outings because I took it out twice on personal stuff, and I took it out on 2 photo walks, and I also did a lot of testing in my backyard. So really 5 times I took this thing out hardcore. I spent several hours with it on each occasion, and analyzed for several more hours every photo I took with it. And and then I came up with my review, and that's how I realized that objects that have very bright contrast. Well, if you watch my review, you'll see that what I found wrong with it. And the other reviews I saw with this lens, they were just they really skimmed over some of the weaknesses. Whether they pounded it for that weakness, like the flaring and stuff. They might have said, the flaring is terrible, or the chromatic aberrations, the purple fringing. I mean, they would pound it on those things. And I'm like, yeah, under certain conditions, those defects are very pronounced. But for just everyday shooting, most of your pictures are going to come out really nice if you can nail focus. And if you stop the lens down to f2, when those situations happen, it gets rid of most of it or minimizes it quite a bit. So that's my problem with a lot of reviews. And I think Robin Wong touched on this in one of his Robin Speaks video about these reviews that people do online. They're just not, I don't think they're reviews with, what's the word I'm looking at? They're just not the kind of reviews that help me make a buying decision, right? They're just simple reviews of the strengths and weaknesses, and a little bit, and maybe a few sample images, showing the strengths and weaknesses. Whereas my reviews, I always like to say, compared to what, right? I mean, yeah, this is a great lens in a bubble, but how's it compared to, say, a viable option like the 50mm f1.8? This is a viable option to that lens. And if you don't need that super shallow depth of field at f9.5, you can get this for about $30, maybe another $20 for the adapter, and $50, and you got a killer 50mm lens that's really sharp. And maybe you don't have a vintage lens and you have your kit lens, right? That zooms into 50mm. How's it compared to this? Because maybe you don't care about shallow depth of field, right? Well, man, this 50mm lens is way sharper than this 14-150. And I'm not knocking this lens. I love this lens, but that's the problem with a lot of reviews, is they review the thing in a bubble, right? They don't compare it against anything else to give you some perspective on how good or bad is the flaring, how good or bad is the fringing. Like the 45mm f1.8, were it not for the camera's in-camera corrections for purple fringing, the 45mm f1.8 had more purple fringing than this lens. Now in practice it really doesn't, because the camera corrects for that. But when I was showing just the straight up raw images between the two lenses, the 45 f1.8 had more purple fringing than this lens. And people are knocking this lens for purple fringing in the reviews. And I'm like, okay, compared to what? You know what I mean? Compared to what? How bad is the purple fringe? It's not that bad compared to the 45 f1.8 when you're talking about straight out of camera raws. But obviously it's easy to correct for it on the 45. It's not as easy to correct for it on the 7 Artisans. When you're in those kind of situations, which is not that often. Most of the time, I'm just shooting normal stuff, and the purple fringing is not an issue at all. So that's my rant on reviews that I see online on YouTube all the time. Is they're just in a bubble, and this lens, just like a lot of reviewers, I didn't pay for this lens. They sent it to me for free. So I might have an unconscious bias to give this a positive review, right? Unconsciously. Maybe consciously, some people, but unconsciously, I have a certain rapport and relationship with the manufacturer or whoever sent me this lens, that unconsciously I'm not going to bash this lens, right? I may want to bash it, but unconsciously I might say, okay, let me temper that a little bit, right? So that's why, again, it's important to compare it, right, to something else. because that you establish a baseline. So even if I am totally biased, if I say this is the best lens ever made, right? If I show it next to one of these, you'll be like, well, it's a good lens, but I can save $200 and buy this one, right? You know what I mean? So no matter how biased I am, I'm showing you the straight out of camera images between two different lenses to compare. And that's the other problem with a lot of reviews online is they don't give you a baseline or comparison between what they're reviewing and something that's comparable. So you don't know whether consciously or subconsciously their review is biased. I can't be biased when I'm doing a comparison between the two. Or I neutralize any bias I might have when I do a direct comparison, right? I neutralize it because I compared it against this and the 45 millimeter f1.8. If I had the Sigma 56 1.4, Sigma should send me that lens so I can review it for them because I hear it's a great lens. I'm not going to buy it because I have this. I'm not going to buy a Sigma 56 1.4 because I have this $50 alternative, right? I'm not going to spend $400 more and get that lens. But if Sigma sends me one for free, I'll be happy to review it. Whatever my biases are, because they sent it to me for free, when I compare it against this, that minimizes or neutralizes any bias I might have. And that's what reviewers need to do more of is direct comparisons, right? Side by side, straight out of camera, so that I can be smiling and saying, man, I love this lens. This is great, blah, blah, blah. You know, oh, here's a picture next to this $50 lens. Well, you can see for yourself whether you think this is better or not, right? Okay, now I'm done. Now I'm done ranting. A-bit at Panasonic does not have a live ND filter that I'm aware of. And the live ND is kind of nice, but you know, for $30 you can buy an ND filter, right? So I wouldn't make that a deal breaker versus the EM-1 Mark III, the live ND filter feature between say Olympus and any other camera that doesn't have it. It's not really a deal breaker. Just buy an ND filter, you know, for $30 and you're good to go. Maybe $50, get a good one, you know. But yeah, as far as I know, it doesn't have that feature. I think Olympus is the only one that has the live ND. Yeah, definitely. This is going back. I'm a little behind on the chat, but yeah, definitely. And ND filters are really great for skies and clouds, things like that. And I think this is a question I need to clarify. I use CPL and ND filters. I don't use UV filters to protect the lens unless I pay dollars for a good lens. Cheap ones just make the images soft. Yes. Yeah, if you're going to buy a UV filter, buy a good one. I bought I only bought a UV filter for I had like an $800 or $900 lens. Is the Nikon 20 millimeter f1.8. Has a huge front element, right? It's like 72 millimeters or something. I mean, it's a big lens or front element. I put a good UV filter on the front of that because if you scratch the front element of a 20 millimeter, you know, $900 lens, and the problem, okay, let me show you one case where UV filter makes sense. This is my old big honkin' Nikon bag. And even this, it was hard to fit everything in when I was shooting with my Nikon. It's a D750. Okay, here's my 20 millimeter, right? I mean, look at the size of the front element on this. And man, the front of this element is really dirty. but I have a UV filter on it. And I bought a Hoya or something. What did I buy? Yeah, this is a Hoya 77 millimeter front element, or filter ring anyway. So I put this on the front because, one, it's huge in the front, and two, with wide angle lenses, the lens hood is not all that protective, right? You can see it's very short on this side. It's long on this side, but it's very short on this side, right, to get that wide angle. So yeah, I put a good UV filter on the front of this, and it's been on here since the day I bought this lens. I bought them together. And okay, so I must have taken this off at some point. There's dust on this, but there's not a scratch on it, right? So in this kind of situation, I think a lens hood makes sense, but most Micro Four Thirds lenses don't have these huge honking front elements. Even this wide angle at 14 millimeters, the protection here is pretty good relative to the lens, right? So okay, let's go forward a bit. This doesn't make any sense. Something's wrong with your EM-10 Mark II. It should fit. There's lots of people with that lens camera combo with no issues. I don't know why that doesn't fit. And Michael says, maybe you can make a video for adapters. I'm not so knowing which adapter can be used with my EM5 II and which affordable lens. I have a couple of really old videos on this. Adapting old lenses. I don't have any videos on what lenses are good on the Micro Four Thirds that I enjoy. Because vintage lenses, you have to don't buy vintage zoom lenses that are cheap. If they're expensive for a reason. It's because they're good. But most vintage zoom lenses suck. All right, don't ever buy a vintage zoom lens unless it's really expensive. Then it's probably okay. But even then, I would second guess how good it is compared to most vintage primes are excellent, but you have to find one in good condition, right? So you can buy any Nikon or Canon prime from any era. If there's no fungus and haze and all of the problems that you get with vintage lenses, if it's a nice clean copy, you'll be happy with it, and you won't pay much. Like this 50 millimeter f1.4, this is a fine lens. It's a little soft, but this is a fine lens. The 1.8s from Nikon are much better. The 50 millimeter f1.8s. The wider angle lenses tend to be expensive, like 24 millimeters, something that's actually a little bit more usable. They tend to be a little more expensive, and at those prices, $200, $300, you may be better off just buying a Micro Four Thirds 25 millimeter. To be honest, I don't see the point in buying vintage 24 millimeter lenses when you can buy a modern 25 millimeter autofocus lens for the same price or half the price. Like the 25 millimeter Panasonic 1.7 is like $150 last time I checked. It's been a while, but it's cheap and it's sharp and it's very good. The Olympus version is double that, closer to 300, give or take if you buy used or refurbished or find a good deal. But my 24 millimeter Olympus f2.8 lens, $200, right? And it's a 2.8. and there's nothing really special about it other than it's a vintage lens in terms of my images, and you like to manually focus. So I wouldn't buy wide angle lenses, but the macro lenses like the Nikon 105 millimeter is really good. The Nikon, the macro Nikon 105 and the standard 105 millimeter 2.5 are really good lenses and fun to have on micro four thirds. It's tight, but for the right scenes, it's really a great. They're really great lenses. The 135 f3.5 and the 200 millimeter f4, if you want telephoto, are really good. The Nikons. I mean, I'm sure the Canons are just as good, but I happen to buy Nikon because they natively fit on my Nikon D750, which is one of the other reasons I bought into the Nikon system is because I wanted to buy vintage Nikon glass. And it's all F mount, and I can mount it directly natively onto my D750. And that's one of the reasons I'm hanging on to it, even though I haven't shot with it in a long time. But if I made a video, that's probably what I would say are those lenses. That would be the advice I give. And Jeff Painter's here. Hey, Jeff. And what is Andrew saying? I have the Laowa 17 f1.8 for MFT. Is it the best 17 for MFT? No, but for 150, it's quite good. Yeah, I hear it's very good lens. No question. Thanks for your opinion on that, or sharing your opinion, I should say. Um, and Stanislav says, and Stanislav, I always have, I have respect for all of you, of course, because you're all very competent photographers. But Stanislav is a little more technical, right? So I haven't read this yet, but let's see what he says here. It looks purple fringing due to overflow electric charge capacity of green photodiodes, and green photodiodes do not add to pixel. Remain blue and red photodiodes render dark, fine objects purple. Okay. I knew it'd be a technical answer. I'm sure whatever he's talking about is contributing to the purple fringing, particularly with modern lenses, right, where they're supposed to correct for a lot of that. Whatever he's talking about here is contributing to the purple fringing that is not because of the lens, but maybe because of the sensor. That's the impression I get from this statement. So thank you again. Your input is always appreciated. And why do I'm not exactly sure what BT they is. If you could elaborate on that for me, Gigafish. I'm not sure what your question is there. My dad never said to say something is cheap, just say it's inexpensive. Yeah, I mean, it's semantics. When you say something's cheap, it's always, or inexpensive, it's always relative to what, compared to what, right? Words like that, affordable, inexpensive, cheap, low cost, all these things are all relative. Cheap has a certain connotation to it, to imply that it's low quality as well. So if you use the word inexpensive, you don't get that same connotation when you say cheap, right? Let's see. Ain't that the truth, man? Let me tell you. You know what's really bad is Star Trek Voyager is probably even worse in terms of techno babble. Every episode is like there's some techno babble. You know, oh, the conduit this, or the stabilizer this, or the uh, I don't know that. I know conduit is a big word. They use that a lot, but then they'll throw in some adjective in front of or behind it. Um, I'm drawing a blank now. I haven't watched Star Trek in a few weeks. It's been a couple of weeks since I watched a Star Trek episode, and it's probably been a few months since I watched a Voyager episode. I've been watching Stargate. Stargate's another one where it's always fun to watch these older sci-fi episodes or shows where the techno speak is always uh, it's dated. They say things that probably sounded awesome when it came out, but when you hear it now, it sounds kind of vintage, like sci-fi. It sounds vintage tech talk. uh, and Stargate, like when Samantha's always talking about something technical and she's babbling on about the quantum physics this and the alignment of that, I'm like, I don't understand a word she's saying, but at the same time, it sounds very vintage. It doesn't sound like modern techno talk. And says I'm getting purple fringing with the f1.2 lenses. Wow. I don't have any of those lenses, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. And Gigafish is elaborating here a little bit. What's a good Olympus to start with for newbies? EM-10 Mark II, no question. It's inexpensive and it's packed full of features, right? Definitely EM-10 Mark II has everything. I could use that camera today professionally uh, because of all the features it has. I can't say that about the Mark III and the Mark IV. I could, but the Mark II has the custom mode settings that allow me to use it professionally, because I do use the custom mode settings a lot in my professional work. I switch modes a lot in my pro work on the scene. Every shot I take multiple shots, and switching modes is a big deal. And that's why I'm such a big Micro Four Thirds user now. Is when I switched off of my D750, which I was using professionally, and that's why I got this freaking honking 20 millimeter f1.8. Now, switching to Micro Four Thirds, the EM-10 Mark II was a played a big role in that. If the EM-10 Mark II didn't have the customizable features, the custom settings, the my sets, it's a tough call if I would have switched to Micro Four Thirds at all. I mean, I really enjoyed it as a compact camera, and I thought the image quality was great. But the fact that I could dial in custom settings and my sets allowed me to use that professionally and really got me into Micro Four Thirds in a big way. So yeah, definitely EM-10 Mark II with the kit lens, and you can take your photography to any level with that camera. Honestly, I assume you've watched the Forbidden Planet, the id. Definitely, that is a classic sci-fi, probably the best sci-fi movie ever made. uh yeah, it's really good. And what was interesting is, they played, I've watched a lot of the behind the scenes stuff about the music, the sound effects, a lot of the set design. It's all very fascinating. And particularly the music or the sound effects that they had on the planet. I forget the name of the planet, but the Forbidden Planet. The sounds coming from the sound effects they used for that, when they actually did when they played the sounds that they sent a probe or something to Jupiter in real life. NASA, right, sent a probe out to Jupiter, and they recorded the sounds that Jupiter sounds like on the planet's surface. It sounded almost identical to the sounds that you hear in the movie Forbidden Planet. So real life meets science fiction, or science fiction meets, reality. It's pretty amazing. I mean, it's probably just a coincidence, right? I'm not saying there's any kind of time travel or anything going on, but it, you know, I'm sorry, hold on. I think a bird just flew into my house and Ellie's chasing it. Let me check. I have to get my net. Get it? Where is it? Where is it? Go get him. All right, false alarm. I did save a bird this morning from Ellie, though. It flew. Man, she's got to stick up her butt about something, though. Yeah, a bird flew into my porch. I have an enclosed porch with a screen, and a bird flew into that, and she was going nuts chasing that bird around. So I brought her in the house, closed the door, and opened the screen so the bird could fly out. But I'm wondering if that idiot bird decided to come back. I don't know what it is about my porch, but birds are always flying in there to their peril. Uh, and someone may confuse purple fringing with purple flare. Fringing is rendering dark fine objects as purple on the brights. Yes. And purple flare on the Pro 1-2 is no purple flare on the Pro, but fringing is present. Yes. Because I have purple flaring on my 7-14 Panasonic. It's really bad on that lens, the purple flaring, but it's different from purple fringing, definitely. So thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, silver EM-10 Mark II, beautiful camera. And Randy says the M5 Mark III. Yeah, that's a great camera. That's my go-to camera for a lot of things. Yeah, it's a great camera. And the Pen F has been my go-to camera also. I still love the Pen F. That thing's still selling for like $1,000 new, and like seven or $800 used. I mean, I just can't believe it. Camera that old is still selling for that kind of money. But yeah, the Pen F I like, and my EM5 Mark III. I like the EM1 Mark III for my pro work, but it's not my go-to camera for just everyday shooting. Don't forget about Brad and Janet. Who are they? I don't know who you're talking about, Brad and Janet. Bird Gopher watch now. Yep. Uh, and John is making a recommendation for Gigafish. Yeah, EM10 with the 14 to 4. Because, I think Gigafish, if I remember, Gigafish is local to me here. I met him at one of the photo walks. I haven't seen you lately, though, in the photo walks. But anyway, you were shooting a Sony, if I remember. I can't remember which one. But I believe it was an A7. You had an A7 Sony. So if you want to get an EM-10 Mark II with a kit lens, it'll be cheaper than any lens you could buy for your A7, right? So instead of buying a lens for your A7, or even if it's an A6000 or whatever, you could buy an EM-10 Mark II with the lens for for less money than you'd pay for buying another lens for your Sony. And okay, Mr. Trek, as long as you are shooting at an angle not near directly towards the sun, how bad is the flare? It's not bad. Yeah, there's no flare at all, really, if you're not shooting into the sun. If you're talking about shooting below the sun, like basically when I have this lens hood on it and the sun doesn't hit the lens, the flare is not bad at all. It's only when the sun kind of starts to set low, and it goes directly in, or you're shooting pointing up and it's going directly in, yeah, then there's some hardcore flare. But for most of the shots, if you're sort of shooting level, this lens hood eliminates it. Especially if you stop down to f2, there's virtually none. Now, that said, I've only been shooting with this for about a week and a half. And I've tried to artificially cause the flare by shooting straight into the sun, shooting off angle from the sun, and then the photo walks that I did where it was a sunny day. To this point, I've not noticed a flare, and it's easily controlled. Now, in 6 months, if I use this lens enough and I start seeing conditions where flaring is a problem, I'll let you know. But as of now, flaring doesn't seem to be an issue with the lens hood on and not pointing directly at the sun. And then most of it's fixed by just stopping down to like f2. Oh, Lauren's here. How you doing, Lauren? And oh, you might go to Hunt. Yeah, I'll be there this weekend. Saturday morning, right? Huntley Meadows, Gigafish. Yeah, I'll be there. And I see you're using the ZB8 meter. Yeah, I like it. It works. It works great. I compared it directly against, the metering in here, and it's pretty spot on. Give or take like a third of a stop when I'm in like just standard center weighted metering. It's close enough for film, definitely. I mean, it's a little off sometimes from the meter in here, but most of the time they match quite a bit. Like, let me just do one right now. So I'm going to put this in center weighted. Like in this room, and we're going to do ISO 200. Yeah. Okay. So in this room, I'm reading. Oh crap. Let me put this lens at f5. Let me put like a regular lens on here. All right. So if I put this at f5.6, ISO 200. Okay, this is the only problem with this device is I can't see it without my glasses on. Oh, there we go. All right, so what mode do I have this in? I have this set to 6.3. So at f6.3, it's telling me my camera's saying 1/2.5 to 1/3 of a second, and the meter is telling me 1/4 second. So it's close. It's within a third of a stop of this camera. Just doing a quick test now. And I'm at yeah, I'm zoomed all the way out to 14 millimeters. Obviously with telephoto lenses, it may not be anywhere near as accurate. But for normal focal lengths between like 14 millimeters and 35, I think the meter is going to match the lens, or match. I think the meter is going to do a good job at normal focal lengths, because this light sensor has a field of view also, right? The sensor on the front, but it seems to be anywhere between, on Micro Four Thirds, between 14 and 35. The metering is pretty close to what the camera gets, so I do like it. It works well. And Rod Mercer says, "Hi Rob, I'm in the UK. Can you help? I just purchased an OMD Mark II. Can I help? I want to stop mounting main menu going up while I'm flowing to tour. I want to stop my main menu going up while I'm flowing to I'm sorry, Rod. That's you're gonna have to retype that whole thing. I can't make out what you're trying to ask me here. I'm always happy to help, but I'm not sure exactly what you're saying here. You can't see. I don't have a problem with it. When I wear my glasses, I can see it just fine. It has a nice contrasty OLED display. I mean, I think the contrast and the brightness is fine, but yeah, I need my glasses to see it. There are other meters out there that are cheaper, that don't have the OLED display, that have physical dials on the top and just a red and green light, right? So you adjust the dials until it turns green. That might be a more feasible option for people with bad eyesight like us, right? Or like I do. And Stanislav's elaborating here. Purple flare is caused by imperfect surface or atmospheric shape of the glass when part of the surface becomes secondary source of the light, bright light, which is in turn overflows green photodiodes. Okay. Interesting. Richard says, I think he wants the menu to remain on. Yeah, I'm not sure. The menu is always going to turn off automatically. And oh, hey, Rick is here. How you doing, Rick? It's raining over there in England today, huh? And there's two 14 to 42s. There's the standard one that has a manual zoom. I recommend that one for photography. And then there's the compact one that has a power zoom on it, but it's almost like a pancake lens when it's off, so it's more pocketable. Optically, they're pretty much the same. You're not going to get better quality out of one or the other. But one is a manual zoom, which I think is easier for photography, versus the power zoom pancake is just more compact. But I think the manual zoom is better. The power zoom one, some people, including myself, have had issues with it to stop working, right? You get this lens error and it won't work anymore. And I think that's because of the way the power zoom, the lens extends and retracts automatically using an electric motor. And the wires to that electric motor come loose with this constant zooming, expansion and contraction of the lens elements, and then the lens stops working. I don't think it's a huge problem, right? Otherwise, they'd stop making it, or they should. But it's enough of a problem that I need to tell you that could be a problem with that lens. There's actually three 14 to 42s. There's a version 1, which came out as a kit lens on very old Olympuses on the earlier models, and then they have a version 2, which is better. The version 1 had a common I wouldn't say, again, common. As far as problems go, this is a common problem. Not that it's common in mass, but that one had a problem when you zoomed out to a certain point, you would get a lens error, manually zooming. Like I said, it wasn't that common, but it's definitely, as far as common problems go, that was one of them. So the 14 to 42 manual zoom lens is probably the best, most reliable of the three 14 to 42s. But if you happen to get the power zoom one, you'd probably be fine. But just know that is, and it's about $85 to fix. Somebody said they sent it in and got it fixed for $85. But yeah, that's that. And yes, I did. Hey, John, how are you? I did miss this question. Any thoughts on the 12 to 40 2.8 versus the 12 to 45 as a walk around? I don't tend to use long telephoto very often. Okay, I have the 12 to 40 f2.8. I do not have the 12 to 45 f4. So I think ultimately the 12 to 40 2.8 is going to be the better lens because of the one-stop difference with respect to the aperture. It's a little bigger and heavier, right? But that one stop extra can be a big deal. You're talking, like, if you're in low light, you're talking about shooting at ISO 1600 instead of 3200, right? In lower light, or shooting at 3200 instead of 6400. That one stop can be a big deal. So I would probably tell you to lean towards the 12 to 40 Pro f2.8 over the 12 to 45. That's because I think the 12 to 45 is a little cheaper, maybe $100 or $200. For $100-$200, I think getting that extra stop at f2.8 is worth it. If the price difference was like $400 or more, or $300, I would say get the 12 to 45 f4. I don't know if it's worth $300-$400 as an enthusiast. If you're not doing professional work, if it's worth spending that much more for that one stop. But if it's like $100-$200, definitely it's worth getting over the f4. So those are my thoughts. The 5mm difference between the two is negligible. It's not even worth considering. Certainly not a deal breaker. 5mm, not on the long end. On the short end, 5mm is a big deal. Like if we're talking 8mm versus 12, but if you're talking 40 versus 45, yeah, that's not a big deal. And Randy says, I have the 14 to 42 easy. That's this Air 01 is definitely a lens or camera I need to go out and shoot with. I think I've taken 2 pictures with this camera just here in my office. I just haven't gotten around to taking it out. I meant to. I bought this because I got the 14 to 42 easy lens. I bought this, including the lens, I think I paid like $250 or less. Dang it. You ever get one of those like weird, like you feel like something's burning on your leg, and then you look and there's nothing there. It's just weird. Getting old sucks, man. Any thoughts on speed adapters for using Canon lenses on 4/3? I've been using a 90 macro made for Canon. It seems to work well. Okay. Yeah, my thoughts on speed adapters in general is that it's not worth it. I had the Viltrox version 2 speed booster, right? It wasn't the autofocus one. I still had to manually focus. So I don't know if it's version 1 or version 2, but I had a Viltrox, which I have since lost because I never used it. This is the problem I have with it. Is it's a couple $100, at least $200 for one of those things, right? And then you have to buy whatever lens mount you bought, right? Like I bought the Nikon F mount version. So I said, okay, now I can adapt, say, my vintage 135 millimeter f 3.5. Well, let's not even go there. Let's take a normal lens, like the 50 millimeter f 1.4. Well, actually, let's not even do that. Let's use your example. You have the 90 millimeter macro lens for Canon, right? I don't know what f-stop it is. So I guess let me just go with the lens that I know. If I put the speed booster on this becomes effectively a 35 millimeter f1. Okay. So instead of a 50 f1.4, I get a 35 millimeter f1 when I put the speed booster on. And I didn't think it was that big a deal. You know, the images were softer, right? Because of the optics in the speed booster degrade the image a little bit. I don't know about the high-end Metabones versions. They may be fine, but I know with the Viltrox, I did lose a little bit of image quality. And then I said, okay, well, let me put this on my 135 f 3.5. And I said, okay, so that makes this effectively about 100 millimeter f 2.5. And I'm like, I don't know if it's worth it. So I put it on my 200 millimeter f4, and I'm like, okay, so now this is like a 180 millimeter f 2.8. I mean, it gathers more light, but it reduces the focal length. And when I did the math, I was like, I can buy a micro four thirds modern lens equivalent. You know, I'll pay a little more, but I'll get the autofocus and the optics and everything of a modern micro four thirds lens. Like the 75 millimeter f1.8 is about $700. Or I could buy the 100 millimeter f2.5 Nikon. That's about $100 lens, and get the $200 adapter. So now I'm out $300, and I have to manually focus, and the optics aren't as good as the 75 f1.8. So I mean, I don't think professionally or even as an enthusiast, it makes a lot of sense to use a speed booster when there are micro four third modern lenses with autofocus that you can get that'll give you an equivalent focal length and aperture. Now, if you have a huge collection of Canon glass or Nikon glass, whatever mount you need, and you buy a speed booster, maybe that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, okay, I can use all my vintage Nikon glass with this speed booster and gain one stop of light which would sound amazing on these faster lenses. But I found the image quality wasn't that great, and so I stopped using it. I said, I can just get a Micro Four Thirds equivalent with autofocus and none of the optical issues, like they were a little soft wide open or purple flaring or purple fringing. All kinds of issues are amplified with a speed booster. Any kind of defects in the lens are amplified, in my opinion, when I use the speed booster. And again, I was using a Viltrox. I don't know about the Metabones. Maybe the optics on that are superior. And they should be, because it costs 3 times as much. But I'm not a fan of the speed booster in general, because I just found buying the focal length and aperture I wanted in Micro Four Thirds was available. So it might be kind of fun to do. That's what I was thinking, but in the end I said, I don't know. If I ever find my Viltrox adapter, I was looking for it yesterday, actually. I was like, it's got to be here somewhere. Where is it? And I couldn't find it. Maybe it's in this bag. I haven't looked in this bag. No. It's my 70-200 f4. Man, this is a great lens. I think I'd only get like $200 for it on trade, but this is a great lens. No, it's not in here. So yeah, I'm not a fan of the speed boosters for all the reasons I mentioned. I feel like it amplifies any defects in your vintage glass, and there's just Micro Four Thirds equivalents in terms of focal length and aperture that you can get that are going to give you superior images. What about the EM-10 Mark III? Compositing and focus stacking sounds nice. How does it work? Yeah, it's fine. If you don't care about the custom settings, like doing the My Sets and things like that, the EM-10 Mark III is a fine camera. But I would skip that and go to the EM-10 Mark IV to get the flippy screen. So skip the EM-10 Mark III. Get the EM-10 Mark II or the EM-10 Mark IV, but skip the EM-10 Mark III. And Richard says, I have the Metabones adapter for use with the Sigma 150-600 massive zoom range, but it's hard to work to use. Yeah, I'm not surprised. If it was like I said, I didn't have a good experience with my Metabone, or not Metabone, but with my Viltrox. I did not have a good experience personally. And then let me just add something about focus stacking. The in-camera focus stacking is limited, although usable, but it gives you, I believe, a JPEG image. So I never used the in-camera focus stacking, and it only works with certain lenses. I don't think you can use the focus stacking feature with a kit lens. You'd have to buy a pro lens. Now the focus bracketing, which is not stacking, but the focus bracketing works with any lens, and then you can stack in software using like Affinity Photo. But don't consider focus stacking. That should not be a consideration at all as a feature in a camera, in my opinion. I mean, it's one of those nice to haves time to time, but ultimately, if you're serious about stacking images, it's best to do the bracketing yourself and, with the in-camera bracketing feature, and then do it in software. Ultimately, that's the better solution. You'll get more consistent results. And then Rick is saying, I'd not recommend any camera that isn't weatherproof unless you're never likely to use it in the wet. A lack of weatherproofing can be a future handicap. So that would mean like the EM-5 Mark II. If you can get the EM-5 Mark II, you would be rocking. Those are about $400. So you're going to spend overall about $200 more for an EM-5 Mark II, but you'll get more than $200 worth of features if you go with the EM-5 Mark II. So, weather sealing among them, but you also get high res shot mode, you get focus stacking in camera, you get better build quality. The only thing the EM-5 Mark II suffers at, say versus the EM-10 Mark II, is the buffer. The buffer is like 1 or 2 shots and you're out. So continuous high-speed shooting is a problem on the EM-5 Mark II. So it's not a sports action camera by any means. That's the only problem with that camera, but everything else is top notch. Build quality, weather sealing, the durability, the image quality, the feature set, and the fully articulating screen. It has a mic jack for video. It's a fabulous camera for everything except continuous high-speed shooting. It's weird why some comments just automatically go off the screen. I meant to leave that one up there. Oh, John Matthews is here. How you doing? Okay, so any other questions? Anybody want to come on the stream? If I put a link in the chat section, would you come in? I'm thinking about doing that for my photo editing live stream. I may not be able to do one this week because I have a couple photo jobs I need to do this week, but John says the M5 Mark II didn't have good video, riddled with moire and aliasing. Otherwise, great camera. I don't know. I didn't have any problems with the video from the M5 II. I don't know. I didn't experience that. I mean, moire is a problem with a lot of cameras. I got some shirts that are just moire monsters, but the aliasing, I didn't notice any issues. But that's good to know. I'll look for it, but I didn't notice it myself. Randy says you don't have the stuff for a live stream. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm set up to the tilt here, right? But you can get by with just a webcam. I could probably just use a webcam for my streams instead of this elaborate setup I got with 4 cameras and this HDMI switch box. And I only have the switch box because they sent it to me for free. Otherwise, I'd be using like a $20 switch box, a manual, right? Where you just push a button instead of this fancy pants thing I got. And Andrew says, thinking of getting the Olympus 8-25 f4. Any insight or experience with this lens, mainly for landscapes? I don't have any experience with it because I don't own this lens and I've never used it. I've never even held one in my hand because it's $1,000. But that said, for landscapes, the Panasonic or the Olympus 9 to 18 millimeter is a third the cost, and will do landscapes, right? And I think it'll give you just the sharpen image. Because we're talking about landscapes. Landscapes, because of there's some distance, you have a lot of atmospheric distortion. So having a super sharp lens for landscapes, I don't think is as critical. So even if the 8 to 25 is sharper than the 918, which I'm sure it is, I don't think in landscapes it makes as big a difference, right? I think you can get away with the 9 to 18. And that's why I haven't bought the 8 to 25 yet for myself, is because I know the 9 to 18 I can get for like about a third the price. You can get them used for about $300. Now, in terms of focal length, 8 millimeters is plenty wide. So is 9 millimeters for that matter. But I don't think, with landscapes, you're going to be shooting at f5.6 or f8 anyway. So you don't need to get an f4 lens. You can get the 9 to 18, which is f4 to f5.6 or so. It's a little higher, right? Depending on the focal length, the zoom range. I think that would be money better spent if you're thinking about doing landscapes. For me, the widest lens I have that's Olympus is the 12 millimeter. And if I need to go wider, I could bring my 7 to 14 Panasonic. But usually what I do is I shoot at 14 or 12 millimeters, and then I take two pictures side by side, and then I just do a pano stitch. So if I'm not wide enough, I can just take 2 shots or 3 shots or 6 shots, do a Brennizer method. You can take as many shots as you want and get as wide as you want with any lens. And you don't need to buy a wide angle lens. So that's one of the reasons I haven't bought into it, is because it's easy enough for me to take 2 shots or 3 shots and get super wide without having to buy a wide angle lens and spend $1,000. You can buy Affinity Photo for like 25 between, on sale like $25, or it's $50 at normal price. Either way, it's a good deal. And just use your 25 millimeter lens if you want, prime, the 25 millimeter prime, and just take 2 or 3 images and get just as wide, and then stitch them together. It's not, because landscapes, typically you're a little bit more methodical in your composition, right? You're looking at everything and you're taking your time. So you can do these kind of pano shots where you're stitching things together because you're taking your time to take the shot. If you're talking about just walking around and taking shots, there's no substitute for one click. A wide angle one click, there's no substitute for that. But for most landscape shots, you are generally a little bit more deliberate in your photography, and you can get by with any lens between 12 and 25 millimeters and just do pano shots and stitch them together. There's a little more technique and a little more work, but the alternative is drop $1,000 on an 8 to 25, which I'm not willing to do personally. I might do the 9 to 18. It's more compact, lightweight, very sharp, particularly for landscapes. But I don't see a need, as much as I want that lens for an 8 to 25. I don't see $1,000 need for an 8 to 25 personally. And that's what's holding me back from it. If it was $600 or $700, I would definitely have that lens right now. But at $1,000, $1,100, I'm like, I don't know. For me, it's easy enough just to stitch a couple images together. Because like I said, usually I'm out with my 14 to 150, and if I'm not wide enough, I just take 2 pictures. I might do it this way, right? I'll just take 2 pictures or 3 pictures and get higher resolution and more and wider shots. So that's why I did not buy the 8 to 25. But I think Robin Wong and Jimmy and Peter, they've all done reviews on that lens. I didn't watch them. Well, I may have watched them. I probably did when they came out. I didn't watch the most recent one from Robin about how sharp that lens is because I just lost interest in it after thinking about $1,100. I was thinking, yeah, it's not for me. And Marco said he'd hop on, but he has to be on at 12. And let's see. John Matthews said he'd love to come in, or he has a setup like mine, but he's not sure if you could do impromptu. You don't have to do anything, just say hi. Where's the link for this thing? Let me just put the link in the stream. So I got about 15 minutes left, right, in the stream, because I like to keep it like at 2 hours or less. All right, here's the link. There's the link. So if you want to come in, you'll be a sidebar or something. I don't know exactly. You can try it though. John says, I got the SLR Magic F4 for about 150. It's a decent lens for photography, better for drone or video. Okay, I'm not familiar with that lens. Must be a wide angle. I'm not familiar with it though. And Andrews, yeah, I did forget to mention this. The 918 is not weather sealed. So hence the price, right? I mean, it's like 300, 400 bucks. But yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that reminder there. And just love this game. I've been using the Sigma 16 f1.4, and like you say, I typically shoot 2 or 3 photos and stitch like a panorama. Works like a treat. Yeah, that's an excellent example. And I hear good things about that lens. I don't own it because it's so punk and big. It's like the size of this thing, but right along Randy's. Yeah, Randy, it'd be cool to see you. We never, even in your videos when you vlog, you don't even show your face in your vlogs. You just have your camera out in front of you all the time. Oh, the SLR Magic. Okay, so this is from before. It's an 8mm lens. Wow, 150 bucks, 8mm, f4. That's a deal. That's a deal. That might be something to consider because it's 150 bucks. Okay, so SLR Magic, send me that lens. I'll review it. I probably won't buy it for myself, because like I said, I'm happy with just panel stitching, but an 8mm f4 beats the heck out of my 9mm f8 body cap lens. Because I tell you, man, that body cap lens, you have to be in good light. It's a great lens, 99 bucks, but it's plastic, and I broke mine, and I didn't shoot with it much because it was such a high aperture, right? F9 or f8. That's that's tough to shoot with. For landscape, it's okay, but it's tough to oh, John is here. It's tough to shoot with all the time, right? If you go out on a photo walk, you can't be at f8 for every shot. You know, so you have to take it off and put it on and swap lenses all the time. Okay, hey, John Yutze is here. This is awesome. Hey, John, how's it going? This is John Yutze. He's a regular here in my live streams. I've never seen you in person, but this is really cool. And I really appreciate your support. John regularly buys me coffee or drops a few bucks in donation, and I really appreciate that. It helps me out more than you realize. Because yeah, anyhow, this is cool. So what do you want to tell the group here? Oops, hold on. I don't have any audio for some reason. Can everybody hear John? I can't hear him, but what am I doing wrong here? Because I can't hear myself even, other than live. How do you make? Okay, I mean your mic is on, according to this button. Can anybody hear John? This is awful. Hold on, let me see. Uh, what else can I do on this screen? Because I'm coming in this side, you're coming in over there. If I turn the, okay, I've turned the volume all the way up on yours. Maybe I have to turn this on. No, that shouldn't matter. John is a meme. How about, no, that didn't make any difference. It's a good thing we're testing this out now. But I've had guests on before. Why doesn't this work? Let's see. Audio output. Let me try this. Okay. How about, no? I still don't hear you, John. Let me try and work this. Share. No. Video. Audio. Why is there no audio? What if I just make you? Let me see. Maybe somebody's texting me and telling me what's going on. Oh. Okay. John Matthews is here. No video. Hide this. Why is there no audio? Okay. I can turn yours on and off. On screen hide. Randy's here. I don't know, Randy, are you talking? I don't have any video on Randy, and I certainly don't have any audio. Why is the audio not working? Oh, you can't get it to work? Okay. Randy's going on better, no audio or video. Skype call. I can't do Skype while I'm in this particular app. If I do share, no. Hide chat. I know. I'm sorry, John. I don't know why there's no audio. Audio input. Yeah, this is for me. Okay, let's try. Oh, hey, Randy. I do have audio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. There's a lot of background noise, but I do have audio. So, John, there is something on your end. Click on the microphone settings. You should be able to click on the microphone settings on your end and make sure you selected the right microphone. Randy, where's your mustache? Wait, this is Randy? Oh, this is not... Yeah. Randy, I always picture you with a mustache and a hat, like in your little thumbnail.
The mustache went a long time ago.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much background noise. Where's your microphone? It sounds like you're in your Marauder.
No, I had the other website up too, and I just did a different feedback.
I can't hear you, John. I'm sorry. I still got no audio. And Randy, you have to speak a lot louder to overcome the whatever. Like, it sounds like your microphone's right next to your computer fan or something.
I'm using a laptop and I'm using a camera inside, so it's totally fluid and stuff.
Let me see if I can turn your volume up. Yeah, that's louder, but... Huh. I can't understand a word you're saying, unfortunately, because the fan noise or whatever it is in the background is so loud. Yeah, Randy is inside a jet. And John, you'd say you didn't see any other settings for your microphone? Sounds like Air Force One. The noise is masking my voice now. Let me just turn my speaker down. There, that should have minimized at least the sound, but I still can't hear John or Randy. You have audio, but the noise, the background noise is really loud.
That's because it's on.
Yeah, let me yeah, I'm sorry, John. I don't hear you either. I got no audio. I can't hear any of you guys. Let's try Andrew. Hey, Andrew. Okay, I have you on now.
Can you hear me, Rob?
Yeah, now
Perfect.
you have audio.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. And you're clear.
Yeah, well, I've got a bit of a sort of semi-pro mic setup here.
Yeah, that's a Polson mic, isn't it?
No, that's a Rode NT USB Mini.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
just remember the Polsons had a square mic that
yeah,
I was looking at.
yeah,
That's cool. Okay, Andrew. What's your screen name? Is it the same?
yeah. You mean on the chat? Yeah,
Yeah.
Andrew Galloway.
Okay. Andrew Galloway.
Yeah,
Yeah, that rings a bell now. But you don't
hmm
type much in the chat, if I recall.
yeah. You answered about 3 of my questions already today.
I did.
Yeah, yeah.
I have
About the
no
8 to
idea. Oh,
25.
that's right. You were asking me about
Yeah,
something.
yeah. The 8 to
Uh, the
25
the
and
the Viltrox thing, right? The boosters?
no, the 8 to
No,
25.
you're asking about the 8 to 25. Okay,
Yeah.
so what did you think about my advice there, or my feedback
Um,
on that?
It's good, but the only thing I would say is, as a landscape guy, often I'm out in, weather. If you're only shooting in good weather as a landscape photographer, you're going to miss a lot of shots. So weather sealing is kind of important to me. That would be the only reason I would maybe not get the 9 to 18.
Right,
Um,
right.
but otherwise, the 9 to 18 is a good lens, definitely.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you're going to be in unknown, if you don't know what the weather's going to be, and you're not afraid of going out when it's raining and stuff,
yeah.
yeah, you definitely want a weather sealed lens.
There's
It's
no
just
point
it's
in
just
having
so
a Sorry, I didn't. There's no point really in having a weather sealed body if your lenses aren't going to be weather sealed either, right? So,
right,
mm,
right. I mean, me, I if it's cloudy out, sometimes I don't like to go out.
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
do have all some weather sealed stuff, but not a lot. I have like the 12 to 40 Pro and this 14 to 150, and I have the 8 millimeter fisheye.
uh-huh.
But everything else, I'm like, me, I'm a big kit lens guy.
Yeah. Well, I live up in Canada, so our weather in the winter is pretty atrocious. So,
Oh yeah, and it's cold, man.
yeah, so weather
I can,
sealing is kind of important. But I
okay, what
mean,
else did you ask me?
I asked you about I'm upgrading from, I've got a couple of Olympus bodies, older bodies, but I want to upgrade to either Mark II, EM-1 Mark II, Mark III, or Panasonic G9. And I think you answered
Okay.
that question. So,
Okay, what let me hear your feedback on my advice there for
well,
the
you
for the
said
kit.
I think you said the EM-1 Mark III was what you would go with, and I'm leaning towards that. I
Yeah.
think if you're gonna, upgrade, you might as well try to future proof it as much as you can and get
Hmm.
all the features. So I'm leaning in that direction, even though it's, about $500 more expensive. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I think if you buy the EM1 Mark II or the G9, it's kind of a placeholder until like a Mark IV comes out, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's not a bad option, I think. If if you want to save that $500 for maybe because the rumors are like they're gonna have a global shutter and all kinds of wow things, right?
mm.
With the Mark IV.
The stacked sensor and all this
Yeah. So
stuff.
it could be a big leap forward or not, right? The Mark
Yeah,
IV. So you could save that $500 and get a Mark II to hold you over because 1,500 bucks or more for an EM1 Mark III, that's a camera you plan on using for many years, right?
yeah, oh yeah.
Even at $800 or $900, that's still a sizable chunk of money for a camera to only use it for a year or two.
And I'm also upgrading lenses at the same time, so I'm going to be investing probably about $4,000 or so in total.
Ah,
So it's a big upgrade for me,
yeah,
body and some pro, because I don't have any pro lenses. I have a whole bunch of different sort of consumer lenses, let's say, some zooms
yeah,
and some
yeah,
primes.
yeah. So I know you're thinking about the 8 to 25 and the M1 Mark III. I mean, that's 2,500.
Yeah.
So we're talking about maybe one more lens.
Yeah, something on the longer end. Yeah.
Yeah, 300 f4.
Oh, I'd love that. Maybe the 100 to 400, the f5 to 6.3.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's designated as a pro lens, but it's still a pretty good lens from what I've read. So
Yeah, and it's weather sealed, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I know David Crooks, our local, he runs the local photo club that I go on. He uses that lens. He loves it.
Yeah.
He loves it.
Yeah.
So
A lot of reach.
yeah, I've never heard anything bad about the lens. I mean, it's no 300 f4, but
no, and it's not. I mean, it's fairly slow aperture wise, but
yeah,
if you have good light, it's shouldn't be a big issue. So
yeah. What do you use for software? Whoops, hold on. Randy's back in.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I
all
can
right.
hear Randy.
Yeah, I'm using a microphone now.
Oh, there you go. So, John, you'd say it was definitely on your end, the microphone issue, as far as I can tell. So if you work that out, you can come in. But Andrew, just one last question is like, what are you using for software to process your images now?
I'm using Luminar 4, and I also from time to time use Workspace.
Yeah.
Just to do quick edits. I'm kind of thinking of moving off of Luminar because I'm not really, I think their business model is a bit crazy. They've been upgrading their software like yearly, and it seems to be, they don't support their previous versions, which is a bit of a mistake, I think. So I'm thinking of moving to Photolab 4 like you have. So
yeah, my thinking on Luminar 4 is I feel like they are very innovative, right? They're always coming out with these really, really neat features and AI and stuff, particularly this latest one, the Neo. But I feel like their business model is they're trying to make as much money as they can, but ultimately I think their goal is to get bought out by Adobe.
yeah, that could be true.
You know? And that's why they keep coming out with these things so that Adobe will buy them for all of their tech and their features and incorporate it into their own software. Because they're not building a client base by constantly changing software and not supporting the old one, right?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I don't know whether you saw Peter Forsgaard's take on the new Luminar. He wasn't very thrilled with it at all. And, like, I understand that from time to time you have to charge more money for new versions, but it seems like every year is a bit much to me. There should be updates that come. Like, I paid for Luminar 4. I should be able to use that for several years without paying for a full version upgrade, I think.
Right. They should just update the lens database, the camera database, right?
Yeah.
Like as a regular update.
Fix bugs.
Have to pay for it as an upgrade. But yeah, that's what I feel like. They're not building a client base so much as they're building software for someone else to buy, like Adobe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
That's my gut feeling. Because that used to be done a lot back in the day with Google. A lot of Google employees would leave Google and start their own social media, Google and Facebook for that matter. Former employees would start their own social media websites. Remember how there used to be like hundreds of them, right? Friendster was one of them.
MySpace. MySpace.
Yeah, MySpace. Well, MySpace was kind of one of the originals, but a lot of the smaller ones that gained a little bit of traction, I feel like they built their own social media networks but behind the scenes, Google and Facebook were supporting them, even though they left the company to see how it did, to experiment. And then Google or Facebook would buy them back. That used to happen a lot. And I feel like that's what Luminar's doing, is they come out with a new version every year, it feels like, and they stop supporting the old one. That's not building a client base.
Well, that's a really short product life cycle. If you're only going to support your product for a year, that's super short.
Yeah.
And not, your customers are not going to be too thrilled with that, I would think. I mean, as a product, it's a good product. I mean, I like Luminar 4, but I'm not willing to pay for a full version upgrade every year. That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Right.
You know?
I mean, that's what Adobe does is you pay every month.
Yeah.
That's effectively what you're doing when you have to buy every year.
Yeah.
But
That's what
anyhow,
I
let me
have.
get to Randy real quick. How you doing, Randy? What are your thoughts on software? What do you use?
I use Lightroom and Photoshop. I have the photographers. I pay a monthly subscription,
Yep.
and I also agree that if Luminar got bought out by Adobe, that would kind of benefit me. I also use Topaz denoise and Sharpen AI, and that's basically all I use.
Yeah. Yeah. I have that full suite of Topaz, the denoise, the sharpen. They just updated the Topaz denoise and sharp. All of them were updated recently.
They almost update those almost on a semi-weekly basis, it seems
Yeah.
like. But
Yeah.
that's
They're
okay.
pretty good products. I still prefer DxO for the denoising. But the AI sharpening has a place on certain images. It does an amazing job. The gigapixel works really well. I mean, you can get, giant images from small ones without losing any resolution. And one picture I did recently is I ran it through gigapixel, right? It was a cell phone image. I ran it through gigapixel, and then I ran it through Topaz AI sharpening, and uh, that came out really good, I think. Um,
I had to go let the kitty in.
yeah, you sound like Randy, but for some reason I had like this guy with a mustache and a hat in my image.
That's because that's the picture on my website and the picture on my YouTube channel. That picture is about 20 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my ex-wife,
Wow,
she,
20,
my
20
my
years.
ex-wife took that.
Yeah, you need to update that because I didn't recognize you at all. Your eyes are the same though.
Cross.
Yeah, I can see your eyes look the same as your picture, but everything else is totally different.
Yeah, and then the reason that I don't show myself on my YouTube channel is I was doing something different that you always see everybody, they're up in your face, and talking and whatnot. And my YouTube channel is mainly for showing where I am and where I'm going and about the place.
Right.
And that's what I do. That I did do one picture in picture. I had the EM-5 Mark III on the dash, and then I had the Olympus TG tracker suction cup to the window,
Right.
and so I did simultaneous recording, and that was kind of cool, doing a picture-in-picture thing. But it's more work than I really want to do, to tell you the truth. And so
Yeah.
I keep them simple, and it's about the adventures and where I go.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what we get, right? We sit, it's like we're sitting right next to you in the car and going out with you. And then when you get out, you walk around. Now, let me ask you, because I know how much time it takes for me to edit. Like this lens review that I just did, that was about 4 hours of editing to make that lens review video, not counting all the photo walks and everything and images I took. But like for a typical ride along with Randy video, how much time do you spend like editing?
I can spend up to 3 hours, maybe more, depending on the length of it. Because I did one that was, I don't know, it was about 30 minutes long, and then my sister was saying, "Oh, those are too long." So I'm trying to keep them shorter.
Yeah.
But you know, when I do the my favorite pictures videos, that's only about a half an hour because I kind of have a template all set up, and I
Hmm.
can just drop in the photos. But then the ride-alongs, those take a little more because what I do is I strip the audio off the video, and then I run that through audio software to clean it up and make them all somewhat equal in sound
Right,
volume.
right.
And then I
What are
have
you
to
using to edit your video with?
I use a free software. It's called OpenShot, and
Ooh,
it's pretty good software. It's open source, and
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I tried like something that you're using, but it was like way too complicated for this old dog to learn, you know.
Yeah.
And I just wanted something that was like super simple. I'd come back, and usually I go out on these ride-alongs, and I don't process anything until the next day, because
Right.
usually I'm out for a good 6 or 8 hours,
I
flopping
know.
around in
My
the desert.
God. Yeah, you do a lot of driving. You told me you
I
did
love
like
driving.
600 miles one day.
Well,
So pretty.
I took out the Marauder because I have to go up and see my mom. She's 92, and she just went through a heart valve,
Mm,
and she lives up in the Bay Area. So that's about a 500-mile one-way ticket right there. And I'm not going to fly. And so I took the Marauder out, and I put all my stuff in it. And I mean, the car just was amazing. And I had the little Ford EcoSport, which is a
right.
smart car, which is a lot of fun. But that car is about 100 horsepower too short. I have to manually shift it all the time, going up hills and down hills. And
Yeah.
the Marauder, it has a 24-gallon tank in it, and I can go all the way from San Diego to my mom's house on one tank. Whereas
Yeah.
with the
It's about
little
$100 a
EcoSport,
tank though.
yeah, it's getting up there. But with the EcoSport, which I mean, regular gas is not that much different these days, especially here in California. And I would have to stop probably 4 times doing that trip. So, it kind of balances out.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
Marauder is it's so much quieter. It's so much
Yeah. It's a
more
much bigger car
comfortable,
and it's a full frame,
and it's
uh,
a hell of a lot of fun.
yeah. 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 It's a classic. Um, so you're in California. Andrew's up there in Canada. God, everybody's from all over.
Well, you're a famous guy.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not that famous. I'm just like you guys, just guy with a camera, right?
Yeah, that's what
Ho-
we all do. We just go out shooting.
yeah. I mean,
I've been I've
I'm
been
really impressed by like uh, Peter Forsgaard and Robin and Jimmy. Their channels have grown quite a bit, but they're also their production quality is very polished now.
Oh yeah, it's a very professional
Yeah.
looking video, and I'm sure he's probably spending 10 hours per video, you know.
Yeah, and I don't I mean you could watch a video from like the first 10 videos I made. If you watch those and then you watch the ones I make now, they're pretty much the same.
Well,
Yeah,
Rob,
Production.
I have a question for you. Do you know
Yeah.
whether Jimmy and Matty and Peter and all those guys, do you know if they bring along a camera guy to film them, or do they do it themselves?
No, they do everything themselves.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't have a separate guy.
Yeah.
Um, me, I just have like my little I mean, and they've gone full circle like I have. They've tried a lot of different things. Little GoPro things, and they've done EM5 Mark III, um, Insta 360. I saw Peter had a couple of 360 videos. And then ultimately you go with the simplest setup. I don't know. Robin just had a vlogging video, right? 50K. I didn't watch that
yes,
one. What was
but
his setup finally? I didn't even watch
I
that one, but yeah, they don't
I
have anybody
enjoy
follow. They just set up on a tripod and then use whatever camera. I found the easiest thing. It's just my little it's an Insta 360, but I just use the GoPro or the single lens with a mic. I'm still struggling with audio though. Uh, Even after all this time.
Yeah,
Audio is
I had a lot of problems with audio in the car, and
yeah.
I was buying every kind of gadget I could think of, and I ended up with the Olympus ME-1. It's a little stereo microphone you plug in the side of the EM5 Mark III, and it makes great audio. And I got one of them little sound socks on it, and that works out really good. I tried the lavalier on my chest, but that I ended up choking myself getting out of the car because I forgot to disconnect it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but yeah, I just came, and also with that little Olympus ME-1, I take the EM5 and I take it out of the car, and I have a hand grip, and I put that on there, and the hand grip has a trigger. So when I'm
Yeah, I saw.
hiking,
You talked about that before.
yeah, so when I'm hiking, I can just pull the trigger and start and stop the camera that way, and that works out pretty good.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I struggled with audio for a long time. I probably spent too much money on stupid gadgets.
Yeah. Do you do any vlogging, Andrew?
No, I don't. I have some sound equipment. I have a Tascam handheld
Uh-huh.
recorder,
Right.
but I don't. I mean, I might try MacGyvering that to see if it will work for me. But if I wanted to get into vlogging, I think I would have to make an investment in some equipment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I found the wireless, I have reviews on it, but the little like the little tiny Rode one,
the square
and
one.
there's some generic ones that that's the one I use the most. It works really well with like my EM5s and my OMD cameras. I have the audio tuned, so if you watch some of my videos from last year, the audio is pretty decent. But this year, when I switched over to my 360 cam, my little GoPro knockoff, I cannot get the audio correct for some reason. I got to keep trying. That's why my last vlog I had to do a voiceover because the audio was just so bad.
Yeah, I know. I noticed it was pretty. It was pretty flaky.
Yeah. Oh, someone else is in here. Let's see. John is here.
Hey,
John, you got?
Not yet.
No, I can't hear you now, John. Don't know what to tell you. But it's good to see you either way. I appreciate you trying.
You'll have to use sign language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been watching Stargate, so the sign language I've been watching has been all like this military stuff.
Yeah.
I love Stargate. You guys watch any sci-fi?
I collect all the old, really bad black and white B sci-fi movies. I just love those. And,
Really?
And vampire movies. I spend a lot of time watching the old Western TV classics like Hopalong Cassidy and all them folks.
Oh yeah, those are really old.
There's not many new movies that really interest me. I keep a collection of the older sci-fis, probably from the 80s and 90s, which I really like, and also a huge Star Trek fan. Also Star Wars, but I think Star Trek is the better universe, and I guess we could argue about that forever.
Yeah, that's true. How about Andrew? Are you a sci-fi guy or not?
Oh yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
I have a real affinity for older classic science fiction movies. Not the B ones, although they're pretty good too. But I like. I recently watched the Andromeda Strain, and I like some of those 60s, 70s classic science fiction movies.
Yeah.
And television shows. There used to be a show called Space 1999. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, definitely.
From back in the
I got the
70s.
Blu-rays.
That was a
Yeah,
great
so
show.
do I. Yeah, that was an awesome show. I mean, it's very cheesy to watch it now,
Yeah.
but it's still, I still find it entertaining. So
Yeah.
I have a collection like The First Men in the Moon, Robin Crusoe on Mars, Mad Max, Flash Gordon, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, of course, 2001: A Space Odyssey, Maximum Overdrive. That's a good old one. Judge Dredd. Anybody remember Judge Dredd?
Oh yeah, I like that one.
Logan's Run.
Logan's Run. I
Run's
have
another
that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Classics. I liked all the Jerry Anderson stuff too.
Yeah,
He was
I
the
love-
Space 1999 guy, right?
yeah, he was I think one of the producers. Him and his wife at the time.
Yeah. At least the first season. I heard the second season they took off, but
I'm a huge fan. Also, I'm also a huge fan of Ray Harryhausen's stop motion. Now, that stuff is really
That
awesome.
one I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, I don't know
No,
that
he
either.
did,
Huh.
it's kind of like King Kong, you know, along those
Oh yeah,
lines.
yeah. Okay, I got you now. The original King Kong.
Yeah.
Um, wow. So yeah, we got very similar taste, I think. Forbidden Planet was a good classic.
Oh yeah.
50 sci-fi, and yeah, definitely Logan's Run, Fantastic Voyage.
There was a short series produced in the early 70s here in Canada, and it's called The Star Lost.
Mm,
It's terrible, but it's one of those shows that's terrible. It's so terrible it's good, you know.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I have that on DVD, and it's fun. It's fun to watch. It
yeah.
Then we have
stars
all the
it's it stars Care Dulé from 2001: A Space
yeah.
Odyssey. Yeah.
Then
Wow.
we have the old Godzilla classics. You can't forget them.
Yeah, yeah, Mothra and
Yeah.
yeah, we can go into all of those. Johnny Sacco and his giant robot, Ultraman,
Oh God, I remember that.
all my kid sci-fi favorites. But anyhow, what's interesting though, like when I watch these and just to kind of segue back to photography a little bit, is a lot of the effects and things that they do. Even back then, you try to think about how did they do those things with the tech and cameras that they had at the time. It really amazes me the cinematography in terms of particularly like the Godzilla, the King Kongs, Ultraman, Johnny Sacco. It was really interesting to see how did they create those different perspectives, right? Or create that illusion of the perspective.
A lot of
Um,
model building and a lot of wires and yeah, different
yeah,
angles.
With Ray Harryhausen, he had his models, and he would move an arm like just a hair, and that was one frame. And then he would do that 1,000 times to get a full arm movement or something like that. And
wow,
I watched a documentary on him, and it's quite amazing. And what a ton of patience, you know. I
yeah.
have a I have a plan of doing a stop motion in my backyard. I got a little toy tractor, and I'm going to make him excavate the backyard into a little trail and see how that works out.
Oh, that'll be cool to see.
You
That'll be
almost
cool to
need you
see.
almost need about 5 lifetimes to film stuff that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just skimming the chat here,
Thunderbirds.
but
Thunderbirds is awesome. I have that collection.
let's see the Thunderbirds. Wow, I'm just reading a comment here from Rick. That's kind of an extension of this other one. We used to do advertising for Hammer House of Horrors.
Wow, Rick, I bet you have some great stories.
Yeah, yeah. Rick is another one that definitely had a very colorful life and a very accomplished life.
I
He
collect
can
all
put
the
a
Hammer
lot under
films
his
too.
on his shoulder there. But like many of you, because a lot of people they email me and tell me a little bit about their uh, where they're from, what they do, what they've done, and I'm always impressed. And it's not like they're bragging or anything, but they do it in a way to try to compliment me for whatever reason. That they want to qualify their statements when they say that I did something well. They want to qualify that statement with I used to do this, professionally, or I was doing this and that, and you did a good job on this. So I always appreciate that. But I'm
My
more
background,
fascinated by the kind of the backgrounds and history that the lives that they've had. And Rick has definitely shared a lot of stories with me about his life, among many others of you. But
my background is 20 years in Navy. Well, I started out at Hewlett Packard in computers for 13 years, then went in the Navy for 20, and
wow,
then for I think about 16 years, I was a combat systems engineer for weapon systems for the Navy, and then I
wow,
retired.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the military. Let me tell you, whatever branch you served in, right? Navy or in whatever country, the military is an organization that they always do 110%, you know? And I'm always impressed by anyone that's ever served. You know, I'm grateful for one, so thank you for your service, but I'm also sincerely impressed with the kind of work that everyone does in that service. And
Yeah,
you know,
I
I
spent.
being in the Navy, you know, with the recent UFO things, you ever seen a UFO now that it's public?
I have never seen anything. I was a ghost hunter for 13 years,
Yeah, you told me
and
that. That's right.
I have a bunch of evidence on that, but I've never seen a UFO. And I'll tell you what, out in the desert, in the middle of nowhere, I've looked up and I said, "Okay, I'm here. Let's do
Yep.
this." And I got a really good camera, you know,
Yeah. See,
but I've never seen
that's the
one.
flaw. You got to go out in the middle of the desert with no camera and no recording equipment. That's when they come down.
Yeah, or you go out with like a 2 megapixel camera, and then you're good.
with no image stabilization.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Listen, Rob, I'm going to have to jump out. It was great to talk. Nice to meet
Hey, it
you,
was
Randy.
great having you,
Good
John.
meeting you, Andrew.
Yeah,
Or Andrew, I'm sorry.
we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, we'll see you again. I'll be back next week. Thanks for coming
Okay.
in.
All right.
All righty. I will actually, Randy, I should probably wrap the stream up. It's
Yeah, I
it's
think
going on 2.5 hours, but it's great seeing you here. And you know, you got to share some more of your paranormal type photos. I think you
well,
posted one or two on Flickr, but I don't think you have a whole album full yet, right?
I used to have a website. It was called oh, I forget the name of the website, but it's long dead. But I have all the evidence on the hard drives, and I was thinking of making a few pages on my website, putting up some of the evidence that we found, and I may do that if people are interested. You know, because
Oh
we have.
yeah, man, I would love to see anything you got on paranormal stuff. Maybe do one of those uh, YouTube videos, you know, of your evidence, and you can talk a little bit about how you captured the picture. Man, you would get a million hits like overnight.
Yeah, I'm sure because the ghost toads are pretty popular these days. I'll think about that and go look for all my evidence and stuff. And the funny thing about ghost hunting is it's the most boring thing you could do, and it's also the most intensive thing you can do because, say, I have 4 recorders going, 4 cameras going, and then you have to dump all that stuff in real time to the computer, and then you have to listen to it in real time.
Yeah,
And sometimes a paranormal investigation would take probably a week to process
yeah,
because of,
I bet, and you have to listen carefully, right, for any
yes,
kind of like paranormal sound. Um,
yeah, definitely wearing headphones and going, I mean, almost second by second, and you see a little blip, and then you amplify that to see what it sounds like, and then no, that was me sneezing or something. And then with the video, but it was really a lot of fun. My wife and I did that for 13 years, and we split up, and I thought about doing it again, but it's no fun doing it by yourself.
mm,
Although I have been in, as you've seen from some of my videos, I've been in some of these places that are probably 100-year-old ruins, and I have taken uh, voice recorders out there to see if I could catch any voices, but nothing ever showed up.
right. Have you ever been like had any physical uh, encounters, paranormal encounters?
My wife and I were in Tombstone, Arizona, and we were in one of the smaller stores, and she got scratched. I mean, it was a full 3 scratch, which a lot
Wow.
of times folks say that's like a demon scratching you. But I never met a bad ghost for myself, but I do have a lot of recordings, and we did get one great picture. It was in the St. Augustine Lighthouse, in Florida, and we had the whole lighthouse to ourselves the whole night. And we were up in the room where the caretaker used to live. He
Mhm.
fell off the lighthouse carrying oil up to the lamp back in like 1870. And so I was backing out of the room. And the funny thing is, that morning we found a brand new Sony CyberShot camera on a gravestone. And so we went back to the hotel and tried to find out who owned this or anything. There was some pictures of these old people that made it to the top. So basically free camera. We got extra batteries for it, and we took it there that night. And I was backing out of the big room, and she was shooting with that camera, and sometimes the flash would not fire, and that's from most of the time the spirits are keeping you from flashing.
Really?
Yeah, and also killing batteries was a big thing. So anyway, we went back home, and I was upstairs, and she was downstairs looking at the photos, and she started yelling, and I thought she cut her hand in the kitchen or something. And I
Yeah.
came down, and she caught this full apparition of what looks like a caretaker wearing the rain garb, the hat, and then he faded away at the knees, which was pretty cool. And that's
Ooh.
probably the best thing we ever caught.
Wow. So she looked at the pictures later. It wasn't like right in front of her.
So what happens with a lot of those photos is they're completely underexposed. And what we do is we go into Lightroom and we overexpose every picture. We never delete anything. So we overexpose the dark pictures. And then there was this guy just standing there. And
Huh.
and that's happened quite a few times with like orbs. Orbs are like, some people say, spirit energy. And we were in a hotel in San Diego, and we had an orb following us at 2 in the morning, which was pretty intense.
Wow. I know my sisters on 2 different occasions got pictures of these orbs. They didn't see it with their naked eye, but when they looked at the picture later, they're like, "What the heck is that?" in the photo.
Right.
Uh, weird stuff. So, John, do you have any audio now?
Oh, not yet.
No, still no audio. I don't know. Check the mute setting. Right next to the mute, there should be a little arrow that you can adjust the audio, change the audio input. I don't know.
Yeah. So Rob, I gotta take off. I gotta go to the little chief room
Yeah,
and go do
yeah.
some food shopping. And so this was really fun.
Yeah, this was awesome. It was great having you guys. I'm sorry, John, you couldn't get in, but I'll try and do this. I'll plan for it next time, though, instead of waiting
Yeah, I mean,
till the stream's
now
almost
that I
over
know
to
how
get
to do it,
everybody
and
in.
then yeah, so I'm game.
All right. We'll see you guys next time.
Okay, take
Thanks for
care.
coming in, Ray. It's great to meet you in person finally.
Take care, everybody.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up here. I didn't get a chance to go through all of the different chat. I'm sorry. It's like I said, I didn't plan for it, but I plan on doing my the photo editing live streams kind of like this as well, where the person that took the photo and or one or two other people that can help me critique or edit the photo live during the live stream. So the person who took the photo can kind of maybe elaborate more on what they were trying to capture, and then maybe have some others there to help me do some of the editing. I thought it'd be more fun to have a little more collaborative and interactive environment. And today was just kind of spur of the moment. I was just like, hey, let's try it. And apparently John couldn't get in the audio, but anyhow, I'm gonna head out. You guys have a great week. Um, I'm I'll be back definitely next week Tuesday, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do a photo editing live stream this week. We'll see. So, but either way, thanks everybody for watching. I appreciate everyone's support and being here, and all of the great feedback in the comments and the chat. It's always a lot of fun hanging out with everyone. So we'll see you guys next week.